Hello, welcome to our workshop on tips for successful grant writing. My name is Leah Powell, and I am a partner with the AOK Networks. This workshop was prepared for the November 10th, 2021 AOK Networks teleconference. Because this is a recorded webinar, what I want you to do is to take some time on your own or with a partner and engage in these conversations. So there's 3 types of conversations that will be taking place today. That includes a round robin, popcorn, and chat. So key questions that we hope to have you engage with are: what key skills do you hope to gain from today's training? What skills and experience in grant writing do you bring to this session? And how will you use the grant writing training in the near or long-term future? The learning objectives for today's session are the following. Learners will be able to prepare for a successful funding application cycle. The topics that we will cover today include different approaches for public and private funding, top takeaways to help you succeed, some tactics for preparing, a toolkit that we have prepared for grant preparation, and peer learning and peer sharing. Again, we really encourage you to do this learning session with other people so that you can peer learn and share together. So what key skills do you hope to gain from today's training? Please take a piece of paper and sketch down a few of those skills that you hope to gain from today's training. Thank you. So there are different foundations for funding. We have different examples here, and in the supporting documentation for this training, we will add links to each one to allow you a chance to explore these different websites so that you can see how each look differently from the other. Fundings to support community collaborations can be private foundation funds or public funds. Requests that they submit might come in a form of an RSFP, request for application RFP, or NOFO, notice of funding opportunity. Some examples of different funding sources include, on the slide, are the McHenry Community Foundation, Grand Victoria Foundation, the United Way, the Illinois State Board of Education Community Grants for Pandemic Trauma, Illinois Department of Human Services Family and Community Services Grants, and the Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development. So there are different kinds of funds that are out there that support collaboration work. What we want to take some time is to differentiate between public and private funding sources, so government versus a private funder. So I like to look at this as passing an exam versus courting a suitor. So public funds are very technical, and those might be municipal funds, county, state, or federal, and they have technical specifications and they want you to answer every question in that application. Whereas private funding might be a corporate funder foundation or a family foundation or a community trust, and a lot of those are relationship based. So the work there is to build a relationship with the funder, let them get to know you. Sometimes it takes a long time to build that relationship and for them to select you for funding. So just take some time to think, do you have a project that you would like to have funded? And if so, where might you look for funding? So as you work with your partner in this session or colleague, what is one key insight from your experience responding to funding proposals? And what is one difficulty you often face when responding to funding proposals? So some insights that we heard from the initial training session is that prior preparation prevents poor performance. So that's known as the 5 Ps in the business world. I'll say that again. Prior preparation prevents poor performance. And then what is one difficulty that you face when responding to funding proposals? I'd say that the most common theme that we heard is time, time, time. It's not easy to write or find time to write these proposals, especially when they are publicly funded. I've seen applications as long as 100 pages. I've seen the responses 50 to 100 pages. I think that's extreme, but then there is the documentation aspect that's also required from public funders and sometimes from private, but there's a lot of pieces of paper to get into order, to scan, to upload, to make sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. So again, those public funding proposals are very much like taking a take-home exam. You have to answer every question, fill in every blank, have your budget prepared and ready to go. All right, so here's some key takeaways to help you succeed. And again, attached to this training session in this file is going to be a handout, and we'll use some examples to illustrate. Okay, so communicate with your leadership team and signatories. That's really the first activity, the first step that you want to do when you are engaged in a grant writing process. So if you find a proposal, you're on a website, you get a link, you get some information, a notice of funding, you're going to want to let the leadership inside of your organization, your supervisor, CEO, anyone who's important to be able to sign that document, put it on their radar, make sure this is something that they would like to have signed, and make sure that they're ready on the date or dates that that application is due. The next thing you're going to want to do is to read the proposal. So really take the time, go through it, read it line by line, make sure it's a fit. Is it a fit for your organization? Is it a fit for your qualifications? Is it something that is feasible, that can be done? One of the organizations that I worked for in the past had a mission alignment process review that they would do to make sure that all proposals aligned with their mission and vision. So it can be very easy for organizations to chase dollars that can then veer them away from what their original mission and vision is, and that can create some problems in an organization. As a next step, what you want to do is think like a project manager. So put your project manager hat on. Finalize the timeline, think about all the resources that are required, and get some checklists together. So who will do what, how often, using what tool. That's a shorthand that I use for project planning. Who is very important. So sometimes we put together a timeline and it'll say budget. Well, who is going to do the budget? Who will write the budget? Who will write the budget narrative? Who will do what? How often? Are you gonna meet every week? Once a week, once every month? You know, how much time do you have in your timeline? And then using what tool? So will the budget be written in Excel? Will the narrative be in Excel or in Word? So that's just kind of an example. Structure the document itself for writing. And so as an example, when a proposal comes in, there will be, sometimes it's 8 questions, we'll say. Tell us a little bit about your history. What's your mission and vision? What do you plan to do? What's your scope of work? How will you achieve this, that, and the other thing? So very often these proposals are very specific to activities that they want to have to get done. So when you're working for a government funder, you are in service to the mission and vision of that funding entity, for example. So you structure that out. So you write as headings, sometimes I just very basic, use a Word document, bold for each one of those questions. And then as you start to answer those questions, you make sure that you use the wording directly from the funder in your response. So again, it's very much like taking a test. If they want to know what your scope of work is, then you say my scope of work is blah, blah, blah. Come up with a budget, your budget numbers and your narrative. So sometimes there'll be a maximum amount that you can apply for. So maybe you can apply for $100,000. What will that $100,000 be spent on? So a shorthand to follow is that there's personnel services and then other than personnel services. So some people call that PS and OTPS. Different people call it different things, but personnel services other than personnel. So your personnel is going to have a salary if you're paying benefits. It's roughly, I think it changes every time, so you'd have to clarify, but it's about 30% of a salary goes to those different types of benefits. It depends on your organization. So say someone has a $50,000 salary, 30% of that then becomes your personnel services. So 50 plus the 30%. And then whatever is remaining is your OTPS. So that includes supplies, printers, copiers, rent if you have rent. I'm trying to think of some other examples of OTPS. Some places, some funders will not fund consumables. So that would be like a marketing pen or marketing magnet. That's a disposable consumable type of product. Your next step after you get your budget together and you structure your document for writing is to gather evidence and other supporting materials. So as I was saying, there are a lot of documentation requirements that some funders will ask for. So something called a DUNS number, that's your federal government registration number. They'll want to have annual reports, budget documents, 990s, IRS forms, evidence that you are a 501c3, for example. So those are types of supporting materials. Evidence that could be quotes, testimonials from your clients, from places that you've had some successes and wins. You want to make sure that you have that readily on hand to help bring to life the story that you're going to be telling in your proposal itself. After you get all that together, you really want to just sit down and write by answering every question. And sometimes in an organization, depending on the size, it could be that there's a program expert, subject matter expert who really writes that program side. Then you have other people in the team who write the mission, vision, some of the other pieces of it. So it's really good to strategize, delegate as much as you can, and really work as a team. Teamwork makes the dream work. Have a plan, have a project plan with timelines, deadlines, people meeting to make sure that you can get everything accomplished in the time that you want to have it done. Double check the checklist. That's part of your project plan. And then this one that I think is really important is to submit it early. So when you're writing your project plan, I do strongly recommend giving false deadlines, especially if you are the point person, if you're the project manager and you need to manage other people getting their content to you. You want to make sure that you have enough time to review, to if there's a word count, to edit, to align the voice, really to bring everything together. So you want to give yourself enough time as you build it out. I just want to think if there's anything else. Preparing qualitative and quantitative data, that could be important as well. So that goes to your gather evidence and other supporting materials. Letters of support, any marketing materials, if you need to have a flash drive. So sometimes they want these proposals submitted in their e-grant system. Sometimes they would like these submitted on a flash drive. Sometimes they even want a hard copy. Remember to be concise. This is the last tip, is assume that the reviewer doesn't know you, but they don't know anything about your organization. So you really need to make clear the good work that you're doing. And we do like that check and double check. And then I'll just say that private funding is similar, but you start at a different place. So for private funding, you kind of start in the middle here. The structure for document for writing, budget numbers and narrative, gather evidence and other supporting materials. So when you are writing a proposal for a private foundation, the best thing that you can do is actually to have that proposal just written and have this documentation, your narrative, your structure for writing, have all of that prepared so that when you see the funding opportunity from a foundation, you can take your idea, your plan, you already have something at the ready, and then be ready to submit it to them. So it comes in a little bit of a different order and their timelines are a little bit different. So we want to just make sure that you can always be prepared and ready to go. Oh, here we go. See, prior preparation prevents poor performance. This is an example here of a spreadsheet. So in this example, we have a sample plan, 2022 Wildwood Collaboration Federal Grant Plan. And we have sections for narrative, program description, budget and finance, organizational information. So who's going to be writing it? So we have these assigned to different people. There's a start date, and then there's a due date. And then there's a status update section so that we can see where we're complete. And it doesn't have to be fancy like this. You can use Excel, you can use Google Sheets, but having some type of a structure, you can use Word, will really help you be more successful. It'll help you be on time. You'll start on time, you'll end on time. The next example that I want to share is to be prepared to make the case why your approach is better than the current state of the world, as I like to say, or the status quo. This is a bit of calling out the competition or business as usual. So traditional programs, for example, easily reach the moderately at risk. Many families are isolated. Program approaches do not address system issues. In a fast-paced world with high expectations, people are in the habit of meeting deliverables for their own grants. They work in a silo. It's not very effective. And these other models, the current way of the world does not address root causes. They don't plan with small learning cycles, and they don't engage diverse families or providers. So the AOK logic model, as an example, you can restate that in this conceptual framework here. And you do that in a narrative format and include it, the conceptual framework, as an attachment in supplemental materials. You want to show that what your work is doing is different from another application. You want to show that you're uniquely qualified to take on the task that the state is funding or private foundation. You want to show that you are very good at reaching families, that you're very good at working collaboratively, that you set a shared agenda and goals, use continuous learning and adaptive action, and that there's real strength in the network governance. By building that network capacity, your AOK continuously improves the local service delivery system. There's human-centered design, there's system building, systems change. And from that, outcomes are improved. And from that, more children and families are positively impacted. And then here's another example for you. So in this example, we are using data. So data points tell the story of your experience. It gives context. It tells of your success. So for example, how many children 0 to 5 live in your community? That's a data point. How many are living in poverty or deep poverty? How many are immigrants? How many are teen parents? Who are the service organizations you are partners with that are serving these families? And what is your strategy to reach more in your targeted outreach? So in this example, we say nightly, we serve between 30 and 45 of the 7,500 homeless men and women veterans in the greater Long Island area. The Veterans Administration estimates that 1/3 of all homeless male adults are veterans who range in age from the mid-20s to their mid-60s, with 58% being Vietnam-era veterans and 42% other era veterans. Based on our most recent point-in-time study, a typical resident profile reads as follows. Honorably discharged from the armed forces, has an alcohol drug history, is 45 years old, high school graduate, unemployed, has been homeless for 3 months, is single, and last residence prior to homelessness was a private room rental. Presently, we are the only adult veteran shelter of its kind on Long Island serving male and female veterans. So this is data used for storytelling. So these are quantitative data points, but they're put together with some great words and a great story to help you, the reader, feel engaged and connected to who it is that is going to be served by this funding opportunity. So example is using data there. And then here's another example. So this is a way to use some data to evaluate success. So success for this particular grant will be measured by monitoring changes in baseline data regarding the frequency with which domestic violence is reported, and by developing a more comprehensive program evaluation with research partners. Data regarding the number of calls to the city's domestic violence hotline, the number of domestic violence related police reports, the number of family related arrests, and the number of felony and misdemeanor domestic violence cases have been collected for the past 10 years and will be compared to the data gathered during the years following implementation of the PFJC. The program evaluation will involve surveying staff and clients at the PFJC regarding their experience with service delivery at the PFJC as it compared to their experience prior to coming to the PFJC. So in this particular project, this is a one-stop shop for domestic violence where all the service providers would be in one setting in a county area rather than being dispersed in their own home agencies. So they want to do kind of a before and after evaluation to see what is service delivery like now compared to then. And those are qualitative data questions that would be evaluated. And then the quantitative data are these number of calls to the hotline, the number of police reports, the number of arrests, and misdemeanor cases. So then they would be doing a comparison over time to see the impact before and after the Family Justice Center was in that county. For AOKs, here are some data points that can help tell your success. These are just examples. The number of children and families screened, the number of children and families enrolled, the number of non-early childhood partners who are making referrals through our information and referral system, number of referrals received from our partners through the information and referral system, number of enrollments or connections that are made through IRIS, number of families connected to health and social services through IRIS, number of lives changed. And what you would want to do similarly is kind of a before and an after. And then there could be a qualitative conversation with these different partners, people who are members of your network, asking them what was the world like before we brought IRIS into our community, and how much more efficient is it now? So being prepared to have a little bit of how you will evaluate success included in your application will help you tremendously. You'll find in the file that there is a storytelling template, and what this template is there for is to help anyone who wants to write a grant have a place to store all of their ideas. So data points, narrative, mission, vision, impact. We have a place for you to put all that information, and then you can keep that on your own computer whenever you have a win, when you have a success, when you have a great photo. You can put it into the slide deck and just save it for that when you have to write a narrative, when you have to write a grant, or when you want to present exciting information to your partners. All right, last but not least, we have top 10 tips for a successful grant. Number 1, communicate early and often with your internal team. Number 2, make a plan by required item with timelines and resource allocation. Number 3, read the proposal once, twice, 3 times. 4, copy and paste every question from the program narrative into a file. 5, build your budget and prepare a realistic budget narrative. Number 6, prepare data, those qualitative, stories, quotes, and quantitative, success numbers, experience, projected outcomes. Gather all supporting materials. Those are organizational charts, financial documents, audits, IRIS 990s, IRS, letters of support, marketing materials, flash drives, anything that's required. Answer all the questions. Be concise. And review, revise, edit, and condense. And 10, give the right details. Remember, assume that the reviewer does not know you. One last tip is to practice logging into the software if it applies. Remember that private foundations are different in the way that they ask questions. It is incredibly valuable to have all of the items in a folder to help you be at the ready whenever a funding opportunity comes around. So if you have the time and capacity, get yourself prepared, get your systems in order, have a grant ready folder, and fill it up with all of these documentations, all these document items. For foundations, take the materials and match to their ask. It's more verbal, in-person, relationship-based exchange. Make sure that you're the right fit. And again, with public funds, make sure you answer the question in the space allowed. Don't go over, or your application may not be scored. now and then. So do me a favor, take a little time, write on a piece of paper or sticky note. What is one tip that you will take away from today's session that you will use right away? And what is a tip that you will use in the future? And now, and a then. And just remember, this really is fun. It's a larger vision of what the collaboration can attain for the community with the funding support. Be inspirational, be positive, be powerful. And here's how you can help. Funds your time, talent, join us. So this is what you can ask for, right? This is sometimes what you're saying in there. This money, this grant will help support evidence-based capacity building to help us accelerate our work. It will help support network capacity for sustained problem solving. It will support staffing leadership to broker connections across systems and maintain a system improvement feedback loop. It will support shared materials, resources, and data so that we as a community can experiment and expand impactful systems building strategies. And at the end of the day, we're really doing this so that we can make the world a better place. So thank you for your time. As I like to say, onward and upward, and have some fun with that. Thank you.